This is the Killer Innovations Podcast with Phil McKinney. Keep in mind that the information and opinions expressed in this podcast are Phil's, and Phil's alone, and they don't necessarily reflect those of his past, current, or future employers. Now, here's Phil McKinney.
Welcome back. Now it's Bon Jovi. Wow. My pleasure to introduce the next speaker. We'll have two more speakers here before we break for lunch. Our next speaker is Phil McKinney. He's Vice President and CTO at HP. He's CTO for HP's Personal Systems Group. So in this role, he's responsible for long-range strategic planning and R&D for all the company's PC product lines, including mobile devices, notebooks, desktops, and workstations. In addition, he drives the wireless and mobility strategic direction across all HP product lines, as well as HP's involvement in industry standards bodies, ergonomics, and accessibility. If you're interested, also, he has a great blog and podcast site called killerinnovationsoneword.com. And so without further delay, please join me in welcoming Phil to the stage.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. What I've been asked to talk about today is to give you at least my perspective on innovation and creativity. Share with you about the podcast. I do a podcast. It's been going on for about 4 years, about 20,000 listeners of the podcast, and it's all about managing innovation within organizations. So what's all this focus on innovation? I mean, I constantly joke about the fact that innovation has turned into kind of being the new magic word in the buzzword bingo competition. Fully loaded word, not fully appreciated what's really driving it. But when you think about what's happening today, you think about just in the case of market capitalization for public companies. In 1970, about 75% of the market cap was really driven by book value, hard assets, machines, buildings, cash. Today, you fast forward to today, almost 80% of companies' value is in the intangibles. Patents, trade secrets, know-how, the market's perception of an ability for a company to come up with new ideas and come up with new products. So what's happening? We're fundamentally seeing a shift from what we refer to as the knowledge or the information economy to the innovation economy. Value gets determined based on the quality of the ideas being generated, the quality of new products, the quality of new internal processes to make an organization extremely more efficient. And I'll take kind of an extreme position, and I'm hoping that it'll elicit some kind of a reaction, which is the fact that I believe that knowledge is becoming a commodity. You know, we think about, particularly here in North America, with great universities and great education, that we're the center of knowledge, we're the center of the key skills. But let's face it, there are great universities outside of the U.S. Think about this. The equivalent of the National Merit Honor students, the top students in China, the equivalent of the National Merit Honor students in China is more than the total number of students in the U.S. You know, you think about that as far as a fundamental change, as far as where knowledge and where expertise is going to come from. So the challenge being is that innovation is important. The impact of innovation, the impact of being able to take advantage and harness that innovation becomes critically important. So the challenge of innovation for any organization is this ability to innovate while maintaining stability. Innovate while still hitting the quarterly profit numbers and the revenue numbers. But it all comes down to two fundamental things that have to get solved within an organization around innovation. You have to fix two things: the innovation gap and the innovation delay. What's the innovation gap? The insatiable desire for great ideas and the lack of supply. This drive for new products, for new services, for new processes, for new ways of doing business. There's this insatiable desire for ideas, but the pipeline is empty. Likewise, if you do get a good idea and you get the green light, how long does it take to go from that green light to then being able to have that product or service or process in place to have impact on the organization? So the innovation gap, how do you improve the quality? How do you get more ideas in? And then how do you fix what I refer to as the corporate hairball of trying to get innovations through the process? All of the red tape through the whole process. So how does HP think about innovation? We basically look at innovation in 4 buckets. The one is what innovations do we do for HP? Things that you would not normally see, but things that drive efficiencies from a standpoint of overall HP. Secondly is we innovate for our customers. So how do we build new products and new services and make them available to our customers, such as you? Third is what do we do when we innovate with customers? This is what we call co-creation or co-innovation. Some notable projects that you may or may not be aware of, but they're out there and you can actually buy these products, is one called Dreamcolor. This was a co-innovation project done with DreamWorks Animation Studio. So these are the guys who do Shrek and Madagascar, Monsters vs. Aliens. Leonard, who's the CTO at DreamWorks, came and said, hey, we're doing all these developing these movies. We need displays that are highly color accurate. But the only way to do that is with traditional CRT tubes. Nobody makes CRTs anymore. DreamWorks actually has a warehouse in Burbank, California, full of CRTs out of just sheer fear that they're going to run out of CRTs. So the challenge was come up with an entirely new display technology that's more color accurate than a CRT that could replace the CRT tubes that are available. We put together a team in the Innovation Program Office combining our color experts from printing, our display technology, our LED experts from HP Labs, and we developed an entirely new display technology called Dreamcolor. It's now been shipping going on 7 or 8 months. It is the most color accurate display in the market. It is more color accurate than CRT tubes, and in effect replaces all the dependencies that industries have on CRT tubes. And it does this all for about $2,000 for a display. This is the significant part. The closest competitor that was in that space before, the displays were costing $25,000. So more color accurate at 1/10 the cost. That's what we mean by co-innovation and co-creation, working with a customer to solve a very specific problem that has significant impact on the overall industry. And then the last is enabling customers. There's this huge interest in how does HP innovate and how did HP go through on developing certain breakthrough or hit products. And so we actually share this, but don't think you can cookie cutter and just use it within your organization. Methodologies like this are not cookie cutter. You have to adapt them to your own operation and your own business. The real challenge is your corporate culture ready? I can have all these 4 things, I can go acquire methodology, but is your corporate culture ready? Corporate culture becoming one of the biggest hurdles in the overall organization. One of the key things around corporate culture is your corporate maturity. How mature is your organization when thinking about innovation? First up, what I call a level 1 organization, they just focus on the core. They're just applying incremental changes to the core. Probably the one example, not to want to offend anybody here in the room, so I'll use an old example that doesn't apply anymore, which was the U.S. steel industry in the 1970s. My father-in-law was a steel worker. My father was a salesperson selling into the steel industry in Gary and Hammond, Indiana area. And you just saw where they just kind of just focused on that one little business and just did little incremental changes and improvements and tried to build up barriers for competition to come in. That's what I would call level 1. Level 2 is people who use tools in order to try to drive significant changes. So business process reengineering, TQM, Six Sigma, focusing on how do I radically change or improve the processes of my business to gain significant efficiencies. The level 3 are companies who innovate the way they innovate. How do you transform your business over time? Some examples. Think of GE as an example. GE is the only company that still sits on the Dow 30 that was in the original Dow 30. They're the only company still there. They've fallen off twice and been put back on, but they're the only company. Why? Because they've been able to transform themselves through multiple generations of businesses. from where they started to where they're at now, being in radically different businesses. In the case of HP, we started off with Bill and Dave in the garage in the instruments business. Then we became a test and measurement company. Then we became a calculator company. Then we became a mini computer company. Then we became a printer company, a PC company, a mobile phone company. The ability to transform and look at those kinds of new opportunities, coming off of being key that you have the corporate culture and you have a corporate maturity model. Consumers are driving the technology adoption that's happening in the marketplace today. We see it in HP. If you look at, for instance, our C-Class blade systems, we actually are, some of our largest customers in C-Class blades are not financial services industries, are not pharmaceuticals, are not manufacturing. You know what the number one industry segment for C-Class blades at HP is? Online gaming. So think of the largest online game infrastructures out there, and they will swamp any IT configurations that you are operating in any of your data centers, bar none. They're driving the performance curve. They're driving the price curve. And so in the case of HP, that's one example where consumerization is driving what you traditionally would think of an enterprise kind of a solution. Likewise, even on our PCs, we delivered Blackbird, high-end PC for the gaming market 2 years ago with liquid cooling. That product was a very limited edition, limited product run. It was putting out some very radical technologies, but now our new workstations have liquid cooling, so we brought that into the mainstream. Consumers driving a lot of what's happening in the technology space. The challenge for you, though, is, guess what? The consumer wants the exact same thing he has at home at work. Consumers are used to being able to have this ability to create their own productivity environment that makes them productive, that makes them creative, yet how does that fit into an overall IT organization which is used to manageability and security and provisioning and cost control, which is the traditional mode of thinking for IT organizations. And this is really going to become a battle. So what is the role of IT to enable innovation? Well, one is obviously the whole issue of how do you align the IT systems for business impact, given that business impact is really driven, by innovation. Just to kind of give you the context on how impactful the innovation piece is. In a recent survey of Fortune 250 CEOs, so this is not CIOs, this is CEOs, first question asked was, how important is innovation to your business and to your company specifically to drive your growth, right? 94% ranked it high or very high as far as its importance. Second question, what's the impact on innovation on your share price? 74% ranked it as high or very high, meaning innovation having direct impact to driving your share price. The third question, how ready or do you have methodologies and processes in place to capitalize on innovation? You know what the percentage was? 35%. So it's critically important to my business. It's critically important to my share price, but I don't know how in the heck I'm going to do it. Only 35% of CEOs have a confidence factor that they have processes and methodologies in place. This is where IT plays a role in enabling what we refer to as the innovation framework. So what is the innovation framework? The innovation management framework basically is structured around the fact that you need four things. You need to have, obviously, a strategy. You need to have systems. You need to have a culture. You need to have an ecosystem. Now, there's two roles that IT plays here. One is that if your organization is not what you would refer to as being a highly innovative kind of an organization, meaning your overall business, then transform your own IT organization to be that example. Understand what is needed to transform your IT organization to be innovative. So this applies, these four buckets apply to whether you're an IT organization or to whether you're an overall business. So what are your innovation imperatives? How do you govern innovation? How do you do measures and metrics? Measuring innovation is a tricky problem, right? and I'll just deviate from my planned remarks and give you a little bit of insight at HP. The way public companies are typically measured on innovation, just to give you an example on the metrics problem, is by R&D as a percentage of revenue, right? Well, guess what you find out? It's a bogus metric. It is non-predictive of future success. It has no basis to predict what the success of HP will be if you look at R&D as a percentage of revenue. So what is the right metric? In this case, the right metric for HP is what is the R&D spend impact to gross margin? Theory being is that if I build a better mousetrap that has features that you value as a customer, you will reward me with a margin premium. So if I'm delivering innovations that you don't care about, then you don't pay me the margin premium. So in the case, for every dollar of R&D, how many dollars of margin do I get back, gross margin? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 50? Is it 100 to 1? It depends on the product. But that's where you have to get beyond the obvious benchmarks and metrics that everybody else uses. What's the right innovation metric? If you want to change the culture, people work to the measurement. Metric is probably one of the most critical things you can do inside even your own teams, your own organizations, within your overall business, is understanding how to set good innovation metrics if you want to transform the organization. Systems, that's obviously a role for IT to play, but it's more than just having innovation systems and knowledge management and idea management. HP, we have an internal system called Idea Central. Well, that's kind of all motherhood and apple pie. The key is how do you create systems that have ultimate flexibility to respond to the rest of the organization's ideas. So it isn't about just the ideas you generate, but how do you create systems and how do you create agility within your systems such that you can respond and support the ideas that get generated by the rest of the operation. So in closing, as I'm wrapping up here, what I want to try to emphasize with you here is that the economy is changing. We may think about, we're still kind of in our normal operation of how we think about running our businesses, and we're doing the same thing day in and day out. But underlying the fundamental change that's happening is the economy is not changing, not just from the standpoint of the recession that we're in right now. It really is about there's a fundamental shift happening. The knowledge and information economy is receding. It really is about the innovation or creative economy that is emerging. If you read the press, there's been a bunch of magazines, articles published about this fundamental shift. You may not see it directly within your organization. You may not feel it personally as of yet, but it is coming. And it'll be a bigger change than what we saw in the 50s and 60s and 70s when we saw the transition to an information economy with the advent of technology. This shift that is coming is going to be more impactful, both on individuals and on businesses, than what we've ever seen in the past. The key is how do you prepare yourselves and how do you prepare your organizations to respond? Companies and countries who rely on the output of physical things that you do with your hands are going to end up doing that for those companies and countries who come up with those ideas. And no part of the world, no region of the world, no culture has an exclusive lock on the ability to create ideas and the ability to create innovations. It happens everywhere and anywhere. So in this point, my point I'm trying to make here is ideas are the new oil, the new gold, the new diamonds, the new what we traditionally would think of as the natural resources. Ideas are becoming the natural resources that are going to drive the economic growth. This is my last slide. You're hearing a lot today from me. You're hearing a lot from all of the other speakers here at the Forrester event. And this is a little bit of a strange switch for me because, albeit I speak at a couple of these events a year, but I always do the flashback to when I was in the CIO role, sitting in the chairs. And you hear lots of ideas. You hear lots of things, being shared up here as part of the speaking activities. But the key is not to take notes and not to write on a piece of paper and stick it in your folder. Believe me, I know what happens. Then you get back to the office, other things happen. What do you do to execute against them? What do you do to drive change? So what I'm going to give you then really is a couple of things, actionable ideas for you to take back to your organization when you go back to your job, sit down at your desk whenever you happen to travel back. One is commit to establishing some form of innovation framework within your IT organization. Don't try to boil the ocean and take on your executives and your board of directors. Focus on what you can have impact. Identify and implement that innovation framework just on your own IT programs. One activity you can do to help establish an innovation framework is change your spend approach. So I hear the whining of, oh, we've got all these commitments, we've got these systems in place, we've got these programs in place. To innovate, you have to have money. You got to be able to make investments. You need to shift that R&D spend. You may think you're locked in, there's no way to free up dollars. You can. It's hard. You have to make the hard call. That's what we all get paid for, is to make the hard decisions. But fundamentally shifting that R&D spend is what freed up dollars for us to make the investments to go create the innovations and create the new products, such as the Vivian Tam Mini, the Voodoo NV133, the thinnest notebook in the world, today, Blackbird, Dreamcolor displays. All these innovations resulted from the fact of fundamentally changing how we spent the money, not the total dollars spent. Believe me, I sat in your chair where I've got 90% of my dollars are stuck in maintenance fees and support fees and supporting current legacy. And every year I got more requests for IT projects than I could do with both resources and dollars. You got the tools. You just need to apply the tools. Think about applying the tools differently. And the last idea, real quick, so we can get to some questions, is find those innovation champions within your IT organization. How do you find the innovation champion? They are probably the most annoying person in your organization. They're the ones who are in your face. You're walking down the hall. They're literally, what I refer to as they're standing on your desk with their hair on fire, right? Because they're come hell or high water, they've got the idea that's going to transform the business. You know something? Maybe they don't have the communication skills. Maybe they haven't fully thought it out. But don't brush them off. Passion is one of the key things you need to transform both creating an innovation culture within your teams and creating an innovation culture within your organization. Passion, give me passion. I can ramp management around. I could get maturity, get some executives to help these people. But when I look at every project that's been successful at HP, that we've come out with fundamentally new products, it's having that innovation champion, that person that is extremely passionate. And again, the easiest way to find them is it's that annoying person that you tend to see in the hallway, and you find some other way to walk to try to get away from them. My recommendation is find those innovation champions, nurture them, protect them, give them the tools they need, build a wall around them because you probably don't want them talking to your boss, But those are the passion is what is key. Is one of the things. So again, establish your innovation framework, relook at your spend, and find those champions. You get a couple of those champions together with a couple of early ideas, then you can be the organization that transforms the rest of your business when they think about innovation. If IT can step up and come up with new creative ways of looking at projects, looking at ideas to solve business problems through IT, through the process of freeing up dollars, you're not going to the CFO and asking for a big bump to do the special project. You find a way to do it within your spend. That's where value gets created back to the organization, and that's where I think IT can help transform and create the innovation for the overall business. With that, thank you very much.